7 B-2 Spirits take off at 1 minute past midnight from Whiteman Air Base in Missouri, cloaked in total darkness. Stealth bombers, invisible to radar and capable of crossing the planet without being detected. Carrying 14 GBU-57 bombs weighing over 13 tons and containing 2.7 tons of explosives, triggered after penetrating up to 70 meters of fortified structures. One primary target, Fordow, the heart of Iran's nuclear program protected under a mountain, where uranium is enriched to reach the 90% threshold required to produce a nuclear bomb. At 2:10 in the morning, the B-2s enter Iranian airspace, and at 2:35, they drop 12 GBU-57 bombs on Fordow, 2 on Natanz, along with 30 Tomahawk cruise missiles on Isfahan, fired from a submarine. Satellite images reveal the scale of these strikes. First at Fordow, the most heavily protected nuclear site in Iran, built at least 100 meters beneath the mountain. 6 large craters concentrated on 2 very specific zones are clearly visible. The clustering around these 2 points highlights strategic targets, defined by military intelligence during the mission planning phase. It seems clear that the prior study concluded that concentrating this much firepower on these specific locations would deliver the desired outcome. The fact that the strikes were carried out with such success, from a purely ballistic and precision standpoint, indicates that the site and its equipment were rendered inoperable, if not entirely destroyed. However, one question remains. Satellite images show several trucks parked at the site. 48 hours before the strikes, a piece of information military intelligence had inevitably identified. In the, more than likely, scenario where highly enriched uranium was moved beforehand, Western or Israeli intelligence services are undoubtedly already working to organize sabotage operations downstream. At Natanz, we observed 2 craters, also caused by GBU-57s. The target, one of Iran's 2 advanced uranium enrichment facilities, buried 40 meters underground and reinforced by a concrete and steel shell 8 meters thick. The military operation is impressive, but we must not fall into sensationalism. What matters is data, history, facts. Let's look at the past. In 1934, Hitler declares himself Führer, yet the market rises by plus 3% that year. In 1935, civil war breaks out in Spain. Hitler rejects the Treaty of Versailles, and Wall Street climbs plus 23%. In 1936, Hitler occupies the Rhineland. The market posts plus 19.3%. In 1938, as tensions rise across Europe, the market still gains plus 6%. And even worse. In 1941, the United States declares war on Japan, Italy, and Germany. Pearl Harbor happens, Germany invades Russia, and yet Wall Street ends the year up plus 19%. In 1945, the year when 2 atomic bombs are dropped on Japan, the market still rises plus 11%. Same pattern between the 1950s and 1970s. In 1959, Castro seizes power in Cuba, plus 23%. In 1960, the USSR shoots down 2 U-2 spy planes. Castro seizes American oil refineries. The market grows plus 4%. In 1961, as the first American soldiers are deployed to Vietnam, Wall Street posts plus 21%. The only real exception is in the 1970s, when conflicts directly impact oil. That's when the market corrects sharply. The real question is simple. Is there an actual risk of blocking the Strait of Hormuz? And the answer is clear. The probability is virtually 0. It would hurt Iran itself first. Its economy depends heavily on its own oil exports, particularly to China, its main economic and strategic partner. Closing the strait would mean cutting itself off from Beijing, and for Tehran, that is simply untenable. Geographically, the strait is narrow, but has 2 well-defined shipping corridors, the deepest of which lies within Oman's exclusive economic zone. To block it, Iran would have to violate Omani territorial waters, an act that would trigger direct conflict with Oman, and with the powers that support it. And strategically, the reality is simple. The balance of power is completely one-sided. The United States, France, the United Kingdom, and their allies operate military bases monitoring this critical strait. Any attempt to impose a blockade would be neutralized within hours. This is a scenario for which Western armies are fully prepared. And that's not all. If oil flows were still temporarily disrupted, the U.S. would immediately release its strategic petroleum reserves, as it has done during previous crises, the Gulf War in 1990, the invasion of Iraq in 2003, or more recently during the war in Ukraine. Even today, the SPR, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, still holds over 380 million barrels available. Every geopolitical event has 2 components: emotion, driven by fear and immediacy, and economic reality. And the reality is that something tangible must be impacted to have a lasting effect on the market. But conflicts in this region happen far from major production and consumption centers. The only real lever is oil. But even there, producer countries themselves are fully dependent on those flows. They cannot afford to shut them down. Even in the short term, it's practically unsustainable. And crucially, short-term solutions exist, like releasing U.S. strategic petroleum reserves, which can almost immediately absorb any shock to the markets. Let's also remember, Iran has been threatening to shut the Strait of Hormuz for more than 40 years, and has never done it. Not in 1982, during the Iran-Iraq War. Not in 1984, at the height of the tanker wars. Not in 1988, even when directly targeted by U.S. strikes. Not even more recently, in 2010, during the peak of maximum sanctions, or in 2019, after the U.S. withdrawal from the nuclear deal. The shock is psychological, not fundamental. We remain fully bullish on the market, positioned for the continuation of the global rally, with a particular focus on the outperformance of U.S. tech and semiconductors.